Hey all, good to see you again. This episode, since the channel um, is kind of aimed at both helping people going through depression as well as the people around them, is going to be about Wellbutrin and what that's like, and more generally, medication and what that's like. Um, so for me, I took Wellbutrin for about 10 years. Um, in conjunction with Mirtazapine. Um, when I started, it was just a Wellbutrin, and the Mirtazapine was added a little bit later. Um, the main thing for the Wellbutrin that I want to talk about is, and medication in general, is how it is helpful, and it does have an impact. And as somebody who for a long time had a stubbornness around medications, um, I'm glad I finally had an experience like 10 years ago, which was kind of like a panic episode that grew into a depression around work and anxieties at work, that got me into bed for 6 months, um, and not working, basically on long-term disability. Um, Finally, ended up trying doctors and then going and giving medication a try. And my resistance before that was more about, the way my brain works, the anxious brain of like, if I have to take medication and that's going to change my personality, then what does anything mean, right? If I can tune my personality, that was like the basis of my resistance. But after a while, I was like, I'm in bed. I can't function at all. I need to try something. And also the pain of the emotional pain was getting really bad. So Wellbutrin, when I started taking it, what it did for me was it removed some of that, or evened out some of that emotional pain. And how I can describe it to people who've never taken it before, because it's a unique thing, I guess, to take these type of medications which like alter your brain states. Um, there were specific memories that I could think about in bed. A lot of them around like relationships with people, like romantic attachments that didn't go well, that didn't work out, and just two emotions stand out the most. One is sadness over that. Um, Sadness and in turn low self-esteem over, um, wishing it worked out and then trying to be like, why didn't it work out? And thoughts like, oh, that now they're in a better place and I'm here alone and I'm not good enough for anybody. So that sadness and low self-esteem is a big part, and it can get painful. That emotional pain. The second is jealousy, um, and I think maybe this isn't something that's talked about enough, and maybe because it might be because it only applies to a very small subset of people with depression. I don't know. I'm very curious to find out. Um, would love to hear other people's experiences, but there's a jealousy that kicks in. This feeling of, I wonder what they're doing now, and I wonder who they're with, and it's also a painful emotion, but it's more so, instead of like a sad and just dejected type of emotion, it's more of like a red hot emotion, of just like, it's like a burning, instead of like a weight, it's like a burning inside of like, and it hurts. And it's like, those jealous thoughts of like, who are they with, and are they better than me, and why, I'm not good enough and they must be with somebody who's so much better. And then just like as my mind spirals into that, I start thinking about like literal scenarios of them being with somebody, and it can get explicit at times, or the less explicit of just their a day-to-day life with somebody. Those two emotions are the ones that come around the most, and they're very painful. That's part of the reason for being in bed a lot of the time, is wanting to shut the brain off and not have those, what I call brain loops. My coffee's going. I do have to figure out how to edit videos soon. That'll be part of this journey, but those brain loops that I can't like turn off. And the other thing that I want people to understand who've never been through it is it's not a matter of willing yourself to just think happy thoughts. It just doesn't work that way. And I've been here multiple times through my depression, of being in a mind state where, for example, now that I don't have the medication that I need for different reasons. I went to a doctor, and that'll be another episode probably. I acutely feel that my brain works in negative loops and just latches on to negativity. Memories will come up from the past. And when I was on, not Wellbutrin, this will be another part of the distinction of Wellbutrin. When I was on newer medication that I was taking recently, some of those negative emotions or memories, instead of being a negative thing, are either neutral, or I can turn them into a positive and be like, well, it means something. Like, for example, like being with somebody, it means somebody saw something in you, and it doesn't speak necessarily to you. It speaks more to them a lot of the times about, or just about not being compatible. Wellbutrin, taking Wellbutrin takes away some of those brain loops, and while I still think about those things, I can get out of bed, and they're not. It's the pain is attenuated. The pain is made less, where I can function, and where like it's not constantly on my mind. And these things feed into each other, because it's like, why is it not constantly on your mind? Well, one, I think it's just how brain chemistry works. Two, once you can get out of bed, you can start doing positive things for yourself and productively putting your mind on other things. Don't get me wrong, there's also distractions that you can use. Some are better than others. Some are coping skills, some are hobbies. Whatever it is, though, if you're in bed, you're just going to be sitting there stewing with all these negative emotions. So Wellbutrin was super helpful for me. Super helpful for me. What I realized when taking newer medication, I say newer, just newer in my journey, not newer in like it's a new medication. It's actually a much older medication. But when I took different medication recently, the past year, I realized that the newer medication that I took gave me different things than the Wellbutrin. It lowered my anxiety to let me live authentically, and it gave me energy. Whereas I used to like always be a night owl and never be a morning person. I would sleep until, sometimes in my life till 2 p.m. But even when I was like healthier, it would still be a struggle to get up at 9 a.m. for work. This medication, I was getting up at 7 a.m. I had needed like 6 hours of sleep instead of 8. And it let me start working on more things for myself. And just getting into more productive habits. So that's what the Wellbutrin didn't give me. And I realized that I was on Wellbutrin for too long. That's the other thing I want to say about medication is always adjust, always pay attention to yourself. I talked to my doctor for maybe 2 years in a loop of like going every month or two and saying like, I'm not motivated at work anymore. I can't get things done. And their response was, well, maybe you should just set a schedule and, you know, get up at the same time every day. And that was missing the point so far. What I realized is like I wasn't living a happy life because I had anxiety all the time about everything, like going and meeting new people or going and like just trying to like do things that I wanted to do, whether it's hobbies or whatever. There's always anxiety around, and it didn't let me have like fun, positive experiences for myself. And that was making me just kind of feel like, what's my motivation to work? I didn't really realize it that way, that it was like the anxiety and not as much the depression at that point. Wellbutrin took care of the depression to a degree, but what with the anxiety there, the anxiety is always going to feed the depression again over a longer timeline of like, I can get out of bed, I can try all this stuff. And that's what I did for a while. I got back to working my job. I went back for a year or two to my old job, and then I started freelancing. So it got me out of bed, it got me going. But then I realized after a while, I got back to a place where I'm like, I can't function. I can get out of bed, but I can't move forward with life. And I'm starting to get more and more depressed, and then I wasn't working at all. I was a functioning depressive, I guess, but it was anxiety at every turn. So back to the point, also part of this point is like, what medication works for you at one point might not work for you at another point. So always check in with yourself. And part of that, the message here is like, don't rely, go to doctors, get professional help if that's your journey, if that's something you want to explore, but be a part of your own care and be proactive. Because I've been to many, many bad doctors. Doctors are people too, with their own personalities, and they make mistakes. They have their own personalities, which might clash with yours. They have ways they want to do things. Finding the right fit is important. And sometimes that right fit, just like medication, can work at one point and then change. And that, I've had doctors like that too, where like they really understood me at one point, and then a year later something comes up and like they make a really bad recommendation, and I'm like, I don't agree with this at all. And they don't hear me out. That's the most important thing, is like, hear me out. So medication is definitely helpful. It's definitely helpful. It's not without its downsides. I have lasting, I didn't really talk about the mirtazapine as much. I have lasting side effects from the mirtazapine. I have histamine intolerance issues with that. And I think the mirtazapine was added to help with some of the anxiety, but it never really, and with some of my, at one point, sleep patterns as well. It didn't really help with the anxiety as much as I needed it to. I realized that after the fact. So, but Wellbutrin, I think, saved my life. I would probably still be in bed right now, just wasting away and never been able to get back to giving it another try. So for me, medication is definitely a tool. I know it's not for everyone, but I was very judgmental about medication and not wanting to try it. I would say, like, especially if you find yourself in getting to a really bad place, where I was in, I had a support system around me. I had friends and family, which really helped me. But especially if you find yourself with less support systems, and I know money is also a concern, right? I totally get that. I've had anxiety about money my whole life. But if you have the opportunity to try it and you find yourself in a bad place, it may be helpful. And this isn't a recommendation as well of like just Wellbutrin. It's just my story with Wellbutrin. As somebody with atypical, like treatment-resistant depression, every medication is going to work differently for everyone. Unfortunately, there's no yeah, that's just the way these medications work, is people have to try them and see how they affect them personally. So I'm not saying like, hey, toss aside all the recommendations your doctor said and go for Wellbutrin. This is more for like somebody who's been recommended Wellbutrin, or who's taking Wellbutrin, or just giving you, maybe the real message here is like just the effect that the Wellbutrin gave me, which may be from a different medication for you, but that's when I finally felt the change in pain and the ability to like get out of bed because I didn't have as much emotional pain. I was like, okay, my reluctance to take medication is gone because this actually did something for me. So, I hope you find whatever it is, whether it's medication, whatever, the support you need to feel good, and to be able to start taking those steps to getting to the place that you want to be. I'm always open to questions. Feel free to reach out. I hope this was helpful for somebody, even if it's just one person. I hope through my experience, I hope I can just, help one or two people. So thank you for watching. Take care. Talk soon.